I probably should stand. You know, sitting is the new smoking. I'm going to make it a vow that we don't have 3-hour plays 2 times in a row. It's just for your health. You know, I'm going to make it a vow. But for now, I'll talk to you a little bit about animal crackers. Everybody knows the Marx Brothers, of course. It's very interesting. You know, it's been some 80 years or so since the movie was made, and what I find very interesting is, sort of as generations go by, there's less recall about sort of the Marx Brothers and kind of understanding how radical they really were and the things that they really were able to accomplish on stage, as well as in the movies, especially in the movies that they made in the 30s, during the Depression, when everybody kind of really needed a laugh and some nonsense, and they certainly were able to provide that without any problem at all. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to sort of think about how to capture the sort of specialness of those 4 brothers in Animal Crackers. And one of the first things people ask is, well, does everybody have to imitate Groucho, Chico, Harpo, and Zeppo? And you can't sort of get away from it to a certain degree, but that is part of the gig of sort of taking on the play of Animal Crackers. It's set on Long Island. I was kind of thinking, actually, it's a sort of interesting parallel with Romeo and Juliet. There's a social argument going on, too, to a certain degree, and the boys are going to come and crash the party, as it were, and really sort of turn things upside down. And, whatever isn't nailed down, they're going to, take it out in various sleeves that the costume shop is building to be able to accommodate all the things that have to be shoved up sleeves to get out the door. But it's an interesting sort of trajectory to sort of talk about sort of how to do this kind of work. Look, in 1927, when this is first done, I mean, this is sort of the beginning of what we would probably call the American musical, isn't it? And in 1927, it's also when Showboat shows up, and that's been designated sort of as the first storybook musical. That it actually had a story to it, and that the music was part of the story, that actually using music to propel the story forward and also be character-driven. Well, forget that about Animal Crackers. This is called, so don't bring any of that into, don't try to make sense of it, don't link things from one thing to the next. It's not going to do you any good. As a matter of fact, it's going to irritate you. I don't want you to be irritated while you're losing your health sitting, But this is what's called a vaudeville musical. So, this is their history, isn't it? This is how they really make their name, in the early part of the 20th century, the Marx Brothers, as well as a lot of performers. And there's a beautiful documentary that PBS put out, about 10 years or 15 years ago, about vaudeville, narrated by Ben Vereen, and I'd highly recommend it because it really tells you a lot about sort of the form. So think about that. There were 10 acts. There were 5 acts in the first half and 5 acts in the second. They had nothing to do with one another. I mean, somebody had the dog trick where the dog went through the hoops. Like, that's really, an amazing thing. I don't know. Maybe it was in 1905. And then somebody was singing, or somebody was sawing somebody in half, or whatever it was. It was sort of, it went from event to event, sort of episodic in a way, right? So if you think about this play sort of event to event, and that there's bits in between, and that's sort of the fun part about it, is like, how much chaos can the 4 of them come up with? And believe me, there is nothing left at the end that they don't think of to sort of skewer, including themselves. And so that is the joy of it. It is about replicating some very famous bits and some really great bits that still work because the timing of it still works. It's always an interesting thing to me about comedy through the ages, and I think we've talked about this before, is like that when things get too specific, too nailed in their own time, it's very hard for us to kind of find that funny, But physical humor kind of always is funny, in a way, as long as it doesn't happen to me, I always find that person slipping on the banana really funny, right? So, and so that there's a lot of that kind of physical and the zaniness and the speed of which the 4 of them work in terms of like really twisting the Margaret Dumont, aka Katie Vogt character around. And that's their whole job in life, is to irritate her. And they do it every which way they possibly can, and do it in a really, really fine and funny way. So that's been sort of the joy of working on it. I have a definition about musicals. If there are 9 songs, it's a play with songs. If it's 10 songs, it's a musical. And this has 11. So I'm like, oh, you know. Okay, 4 of them are reprises, but still, you still gotta sing them. You know, there's a band on stage. It's going to be fantastic. We've got live musicians on stage who also get picked on, as you might imagine. So, I mean, nobody's safe. The scenery is not safe. I dare say you're not safe either, but I don't want to give that away. I don't want to scare you too much, you know, because I want you to come and see it, because it's really, really crazy. There is some nonsensical plot about a stolen painting 2 or 3 times. And we've read the original stage play from 1928. We've read the screenplay from 1932. We have read an adaptation, that was a very famous adaptation. It was done in 1982 by Doug Wager at Arena Stage. We've read the Henry Wishcamper version, which is the one we're doing, and which is the 10 actors playing a lot of different roles. Nobody knows the story of these 3 paintings and how they... I mean, Richard Hay has done a chart about trying to find what happened. Who has the painting win? I mean, this is just crazy. And I'm like, and I said to everyone, if we're worried about who has the painting win, we're obviously not doing our job, because it's not going to make sense. So please don't get worked up about who has the painting or win. Nobody on stage knows. It doesn't matter, you know. And eventually Harpo will use it as a blanket. That's all I can kind of reveal. There's no reverence about being reality of any kind, character motivation, forget about it. You know, emotional value and people caring about other people. No, not happening. Now, like a lot of early musicals, Showboat is the first sort of example against, meaning songs that were written, you know, to go with the play itself. It wasn't, it was very common in the early 20th century to just have, you know, Tin Pan Alley's going at the time, right? This is the beginning of sort of the pop song. And the way they were making money is by they would just insert songs into anything. Any review, any musical, any play, because people would be humming the songs, then they'd go buy the sheet music. That's how you made a lot of money, was by selling sheet music, right? And so there are several songs. There are several songs in this play. You kind of go, where'd that beautiful love ballad come from? At last I checked, is there really a love story going on? And there's some really beautiful songs that you'll recognize that actually originated in this particular play. But kind of, does it have a lot to do with character and plot and all that kind of stuff? Not really, but it's a remnant of that sort of form. The other thing that's interesting against the other 3 plays, not that we're not a beautiful play, everybody's going to talk about how beautiful the play is. So, you know, it's like, not that, it's just that this has a so different and anarchy as sort of its reign in form, as well as its characterization, as well as its costumes, you know what I mean? And so in some ways it's going to be this great kind of antidote and sort of complement to the other 4 shows. And as you know, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, you know, if you come for the couple of days, for, you know, the many people who come for a couple of days to see shows, we want them to see variety. And Animal Crackers was definitely chosen as complement, you know, to sort of this high seriousness of something like Romeo and Juliet, and sort of the beautiful style that White Snake is going to be delving in. And this really interesting and sort of complicated, nuanced genre of Seagull. I guess it's called a comedy, but you know, right? There's no question about what Animal Crackers is. Comedy, capital K. Really, we've had a blast in the rehearsal room, coming who can out-top who can steal from the best. We've stolen from every movie there ever was, and having a great time and claiming it our own, you know. And I think it'll be a wonderful, wonderful show and a lot of fun for all of us. So that's my introduction.